showed me why. Instead of asking why, start asking why not. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're lying in the sun. Bit by bit, the older that we get, the faster it tick, 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 ticks. Time flies. Whoa, whoa, time flies.
All right, good afternoon. Lyndall here again with Marshfield Old School Times. I've got Landon Fraker back here behind the keyboard for me today. Logan's on a little trip, so Landon, thanks for standing in today. And have our special guest today with us, Freddie Savage. Fred's the director of the Cox Ambulance Service here in Webster County, and I think he's also over Douglas County. We'll hear a little more about that in just a minute, but I want to welcome you today on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, March 22nd. Also want to mention that tonight is Lincoln Days here in Webster County, and we're all set up down in the gym. We do have Governor Kehoe coming tonight. We have Congressman Burleson, Congressman Alford, both represent Webster County, and all the local office holders and Representative Black, State Senator Curtis Trent should all be here. If you're interested in hearing what they have to say, come on down and join us this evening. It should be a great time. So with that, Fred, we just like to get right off start right off the beginning because we've only got an hour and there's always plenty to talk about. So as our good friend Gary Price would say, when did you discover America?
Well, that's an interesting story because I was actually born in Germany.
Really?
Yes, and so
What?
my parents were
Yeah.
U.S. citizens. My dad was in the military, and he was deployed to Germany, and so that's where I was born and spent the first 16 months. Then we moved back to the States,
Right.
and we bounced around to different deployments that he had. He was an explosives expert, so he not only did that on the bomb squad, but he also taught explosive to the new guys. So
he was in the Army?
he was in the Air Force.
Air Force, okay.
Yep. So in 73, he retired and we moved back to Conway, back to the Webster County area. And that's where we've been ever since.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where my mom's family's all from.
Yeah.
And so here we've been.
What was your mom's maiden name?
Owens.
Owens, okay.
Yep.
Well, and your dad, of course, was Fred Savage, and great guy. A lot of people around here knew him, and certainly died tragically in a car accident several years ago. And the marker's still out on the interstate.
Yep.
So you and your mother and dad had you got how many siblings?
I have a brother and a sister.
And your brother's Rob.
Right.
A lot of people knew Rob, Highway Patrol.
Yep. He just recently retired from the Highway Patrol. My sister's a nurse.
Okay. Grew up in Conway.
Yep. Went to school there. Grew up there. Still live there.
What year did you graduate?
84.
84. Okay. And you live right there at the intersection, almost, or not quite to the intersection, but you're kind of known down there for something. Tell us what are you known for there at where you live? Christmas decorations.
I have lots of Christmas decorations. Yeah, we usually put up quite a few every year.
Yeah.
So, and we have fun doing it. Started it with the kids, and then they grew up and don't really have much want to do it anymore. But the grandkids absolutely love it, and so we still continue to do it.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
And you live on old Route 66 too.
Yeah. I wear many hats too. I've been the mayor of Conway for almost 30 years and the fire chief too. So
yeah,
I have a few other things.
Lifetime of public service, that's for sure. Yeah. That's for sure. So after high school, tell us a little bit about your life.
Well, back in the story where my dad was in the military and he was deployed to Vietnam. I was even before school age, and I would watch every day the show Emergency, and it was very well known to everybody that my whole goal was to be a paramedic firefighter.
Yeah. Since
a very young age. And so when I got out of high school, I worked with my father in his refrigeration business for about a year as I did the schooling. I did first responder first, and then I took the EMT class through Webster County Paramedics here in Webster in 1985.
85.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Webster County and the ambulance service in Webster County. And then how about Leah? When did you meet her?
We went to high school together.
Okay.
and we knew each other through high school quite a bit. It was actually right after I graduated high school, and we started dating, and that was a long time.
Yeah, it was.
Probably 85, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
same time I got my MT. So,
That's
or just before I went to MT
Yeah.
class, we started dating.
And then when did you get married?
In 1988.
88. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, that's it's amazing how fast time goes around, isn't it? And she was an Eichard, right?
Yep.
And of course, I know a lot of people know her mother, Sue, because she writes poems
Yep.
and has done a lot of work, I think, with history and things like that.
And her mom's maiden name was Price, so she's related to 2/3 of Webster.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, we had here not too long ago had talked about Route 66 and talked about the old station we're getting ready to move, and your mother-in-law sent me a message, a really nice message, stating that her dad had been a barber in that building, which I didn't remember. That was before my time. Sometime in the 50s or sometime, they had a barber shop in there. Him and I think another fellow may have been in there as well. So that was, again, new knowledge that I didn't know. So it's always good. Um, so you guys kind of got started in life, you and her, and then you had a couple boys.
Yep. Ricky and Matthew.
Mhm.
And they grew up indoctrinated into emergency services from the day they were born, and so they're both in the profession.
Yeah.
My oldest son is a regional manager, paramedic for Cox, hold the same title I do, and he covers the western region. I cover the eastern region. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Matthew, my youngest son, is a Springfield firefighter, and he works part-time on the ambulance too as well. So they're all well
Yeah.
entrenched in it.
And I think I saw where Ricky was running for school board.
He is. He's running for school board there in Conway.
Conway, yeah.
He's got 2 children. One's in first grade, and the other one will be starting kindergarten here in a couple of years. And so they're really interested in doing what they can to help promote and move things forward with the school district.
Carry on that public service that
You betcha.
Mom and Dad
They're
started.
both on the fire departments. They both have multiple hats too. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. What a great family of serving, for sure, of service. So let's talk just a little bit about the before we get into maybe what you do today in the ambulance service business there here in Webster County. Let's talk a little bit about the history. And I briefly mentioned it on the Facebook invitation, but I think, as I mentioned, in the first ambulance in Webster County after the funeral homes, of course, they were private through the funeral homes. We had Fraker Funeral Home, we had Barbara Edwards Arthur Funeral Home at the time, and I guess the state laws got a little more stringent, and they had to improve and have bigger vehicles and head clearance in the vans, and I'm not sure what all you might remember all that or know about. It's a little before your time serving.
It was before my time when I was young, but I've had the privilege of knowing both of them and talking with them considerably over the years.
Right.
And the Frakers, especially being lifelong friends with Gary and Jackie, and got to hear all kinds of stuff about the good old days. And stuff like that. So I remember when I was first moved back here, and I was just before, it was about 2nd grade, I think, when we'd go up to the 4th of July parade, and you would see the Fraker ambulances there just off the square. I remember that as a memory. And then shortly after that is when the funeral homes got out of it, and I believe Marshfield Fire took it over.
Right, around 75, wasn't it?
74, I think Marshfield did. And then the county took it over in 75.
75. So that first year was Marshfield Fire. Former Mayor Wayne Plunkett sent me a message and mentioned that for about a year, the Marshfield Fire Department, and I guess they were all volunteers at the time, not paid necessarily, but man, can you imagine that would have been quite a career to take on, and I'm sure they had some training, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, first responder and basic, and like I said, the big names, you can't really speak a bigger name in Webster County's history for public safety than Wayne Plunkett.
Right.
I mean, he was the fire chief, he was the mayor, he did everything. A big name.
Right.
So, but they took it over, and then I know in 75 the county took it over.
Yeah. I think Sheriff Fraker's office dispatched that
They
because
did.
before that, the phone that when you called it, you directly called the funeral home number.
Mm-hmm.
Either, and of course we had funeral homes on the south side too, Seymour and Portland and Rogersville, and so there wasn't one universal number to call, I guess.
Correct.
So I think they started that dispatching then in
And the sheriff's
74.
department dispatched the ambulances till 1989, November 1 of 1989, when Cox took over the operation. The Webster County Sheriff's dispatched us for years and years and years.
Yeah,
as the ambulance
about 15
service.
years or so.
Yep.
And then in 75, tell kind of what the county took that and tell us a little bit about that. I know we had a picture on Facebook.
Right. And some of the first people and the big names in Webster County that really have done so many things and continue to do so many things. Dennis Robinson, who we all refer to now as Dr. Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
he was the actual first director of the ambulance service for the county in 75, and he ran that. Mark Alexander, who is still currently my boss.
Yeah, I worked for Cox.
He's the director of EMS services for Cox Health Systems.
Mhm.
So he was one of them. Roger Todd, which I had a lot of time over the years to visit with Roger and get a lot of stories and stuff there. And there was others, not only with that first startup, but through the years as we progressed into Webster County paramedic that I got to know and were mentors of mine.
Sure. Jim Marlin was in that.
Jim Marlin, yeah.
The picture that actually Roger, thank you Roger for sending that picture in yesterday, I believe it was, and of those 4 first original paramedics or EMTs, whatever they were at the time, I guess. But that's really
Yep.
brings back some history.
And all of them were EMTs. I know that Dennis, Dr. Robinson, and Mark took the
That's okay. Hey, and if you need to take it, you know you're in that business.
I need to just put it on silent.
That's okay. You be sure and take a look and make sure we don't have some emergency coming up.
I let my supervisors know that they're handling stuff.
Yeah.
But Dennis Robinson, Doc Robinson is what I call him now.
Yeah.
And Mark Alexander were the first 2, and they went to the very first paramedic class in Missouri.
Yeah.
And got their paramedic license, which moved EMS in 78. They went 77, 78. So sometime in 78, they graduated with their certification.
Yeah.
And they moved the county to an ALS, as we call it, Advanced Life Support.
So we were leaders even back then.
That was the birth of Advanced Life Support for Webster County, and then it just progressed from there. And pretty soon they had paramedics on and an EMT on every ambulance, and that's still how we operate today. One paramedic, one EMT,
one in each.
Yep.
And then Doc was going to, I think he was going to med school about that same time too, I remember. So those guys got things kind of kicked off, and then it rolled over, and then the sheriff's department was dispatching, and I think they actually wore deputy uniforms and had like deputy badges and so forth, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for several years, and then you said Cox came along, right?
Right. The same way that kind of moved it from the funeral homes to the county, moved it from the county where they knew they needed to find somebody to handle it. In 89, the regulations were just becoming so stringent that they were hard to manage. Medicare billing, Medicaid billing, insurance billings were really hitting the picture, and they become so cumbersome and so difficult that the county quickly understood that this is not our ability. This is not what we want to do, and so they started looking for a provider to provide. One thing that very few people know, that still to this day, though, Webster County Commission holds the license for the ambulance service in Webster, so their overall authority still of the operation here in Webster County, but we've had it 35 years now as Cox with a great relationship with them.
So that contract could actually flip and go to Mercy. I mean, at some point, if things
back in 2014 when we were spending $1 million on an ambulance station, they signed a 20-year contract. So we're good to 34. Which should be longer than I'm.
Absolutely. Well, it's only right.
But yeah, we've had such a wonderful relationship here with the commissioners that.
Well, you guys are leaders. I mean, you've been, between Doc Robinson, Mark, and yourself, and you guys have led the whole Southwest Missouri parade, you might say, when it comes to leadership in emergency management with the ambulance services,
Yes.
as your title dictates. You
Well,
know.
right, and Mark is instrumental. I'm sure you're aware. You were in Jeff City
Mhm.
for a lot of years,
Right.
and I was there with you.
You bet.
And Mark is a big reason why we've had the success that we've had in the legislature to get things changed in the state of Missouri, to make Missouri actually one of the leading states in the nation
Yeah.
for what we're doing with comprehensive care in what we call the pre-hospital field, but the emergency field.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty impressive
Yeah.
on what we've been able to do working with people like you and the governors and the senators and congressmen that
I think there's no partisan politics when it comes to saving lives. I think people, the beauty of the business you're in, it seems as to me as though whether you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever, don't want to get involved in politics at all. There's not anybody that can argue that you need money, you need the right legislation, you need the right laws to be able to administer certain things and so forth to save those lives. And
Right.
that's one thing that I think our legislature has always been good about, is trying to do that.
True, and like with every other place, we all deal with increase of costs. It just seems like when it comes into the emergency field for law enforcement, fire department, or especially healthcare, medicine, EMS, the prices have just got
It
ridiculous.
is ridiculous.
Back in 1990, I spec'd out and ordered ambulances, and I could get them in 3 months, and they cost around $100,000 in 1990 to outfit them with everything we needed.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at $350,000 and a 2-year wait for one ambulance.
Really?
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Is that it's pretty staggering. Heart monitors used to cost $5,000. The ones we're looking at now are $65,000.
Really?
So the cost is just astronomical when it
Man,
comes
that
to
is
the
crazy.
equipment.
It is. It is.
So,
But what's a life worth?
exactly.
What's a life worth? So let's kind of roll more into that now. So let's talk a little bit more about today, and like how many ambulances do you supervise in Webster County and so
Well,
forth?
we always have 4 ambulances assigned to Webster County. They're all ALS, meaning
Uh-huh.
they all have a paramedic and EMT on them.
Uh-huh.
We station 1 in Rogersville, 1 in Seymour, and 2 in Marshfield.
Mhm.
We do have the capabilities over the last 10 years, and especially in the last 8, to what we call flex for coverage. And we have float cars that are available to come help, whether it's Webster County or Christian County or Stone County,
Mhm.
but they float to wherever, the massive hits going. And
Sure.
that seems to be Webster County quite often.
Yeah.
Just the other day, we had 7 ambulances operating in Webster County with our original 4, and we pulled one up from Douglas County, and then a couple of the float cars, and we ended up having 7. So,
Wow. Well, isn't it part of that is the fact that we're so unique that we have 2 major 4-lane thoroughfares
yes,
coming through Webster County, and really not too many counties have that.
right. And a lot of people don't realize just how much patient load we pick up, not from accidents. I mean, we have some accidents,
Yeah.
more than most counties.
Yeah.
We get travelers from Douglas County and Wright County and Texas County and Laclede County
Mhm.
that's trying to make it to the hospitals
Right.
and getting in trouble, and they call 911 and pull over at Taco Bell, or they pull over at the rest area, or they pull over at the
Yeah. You don't think about that. Yeah.
And
That's
we
a great
run
point.
many
Yeah.
calls from out of county people that's trying to make it to the hospital and just can't.
We're kind of the end of the funnel, the neck of the funnel, aren't we, here in
Right.
Webster County? All points are coming together to get into the hospitals. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
No.
So you've got how many personnel do you supervise?
I've got 40 employees right now
You have
for
40
Webster
employees.
County.
Wow.
28 of them are full-time, 12 are part-time.
Yeah.
And a lot of them part-time guys and gals are other parts of other things like Marshfield Fire. I have
Mhm.
several that work for Marshfield Fire that also work for me part-time.
Mhm.
I have some from Springfield Fire that works for me part-time.
Right.
So these guys have other full-time jobs, and they just help us pick up shifts as part-time
Yeah.
employees. But we have 28 full-time.
Yeah. Wow. Man, that's big business.
Well, we started when we took over in '89 from Webster County ambulance. We had 12,
Yeah.
and we run 2 ambulances. I think, well, I know I was there when I did the stats. I remember the last year we ran 1,368 calls. The last year that Webster County, we ran 7,000 last year. So that's
1368 to 7,000.
so
Wow.
that's from 1989 to
Yeah.
2024. But
And even though you have the flex vehicles, really with only 2 more, I mean, you just doubled your vehicles from 2 to 4.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Man, that's amazing.
Well, we used to run 24 and 48-hour shifts on the ambulance too. But when the call volumes get as high as they are now, we run straight 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
And they're pretty busy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always moving, always picking up and trying to care for patients, and then trying to backfill, like I said, within float cars or Douglas County cars or Springfield cars. So, like I said, it's not uncommon to have 7 ambulances in Webster County.
What's the busiest times generally during the week? Is it evenings, mornings, weekends in general? Do you see more calls on a Friday night or Saturday night?
Mid-morning, and then 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. Rush hour.
Yeah, and it just seems to be the pinnacle points where we really have a pretty high volume. And there's some days that the volume is just crazy all day long. There's other days where you get 2, 3, 4 hours in between calls, and that gives us time to do some education and stuff like that that's required.
Another question that I thought of that, and I know you can't give specifics because of HIPAA or whatever, but it seems as though a lot of the accidents we hear about today, whether it be on 44 or even on the state highways or whatever, are because of distracted driving. Would you say that that's one of the leading cause of accidents?
I think everybody, and when you look at statistics, that'd be the number 1 cause of the accidents.
And how much has that increased since the cell phones?
A lot.
Yeah. I mean,
a lot.
No
because
question.
it's the number 1 draw to draw your attention away from what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
So,
it's really tragic. And,
it is.
I learned a lot in my time in Jeff City, even with the numbers and the statistics that were given. And we all want to think about, freedom and being able to do whatever we want to do. But let's face it, the distractions of cell phones and doing other things are killing people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No,
and it's like the technology's out there for, it just depends on when we go far enough to implement it, that cell phones, and you can set it on your cell phone now, but it will basically shut it down when the vehicle's moving.
Right.
And it'll just send it to your voicemail or hold it for you until you stop, and then you'll get all your messages. They have that technology, and that would probably be a benefit for a lot of people to keep the distraction from going on. I mean, there's other distractions. There's your radio, there's kids in the car, there's stuff like that. But yeah, cell phones,
brushing your hair, whatever.
Cell phones are probably the number 1 biggest one.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, every day you hear about another one, it seems like. I have to mention this, and again, we're not going to name specifics, but I know here just a few weeks ago, not too many weeks ago, you guys saved the life of a little Amish girl. And I'm familiar with the Amish community, and had it not have been for the quick action of the family there as well, but certainly it's just amazing how that particular situation ended up the way it did.
Oh yeah, we have great success stories and things that just absolutely make it worthwhile for what you do, and then we have a lot of tragedies.
Yeah.
The one in particular, kudos to the Webster County Sheriff's Deputy and Seymour's Fire Chief, Southern Webster County's Fire Chief. They were the first 2 on scene by probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Over our ambulance, and them guys did amazing work. So it all was a great experience.
Combined effort. Yeah.
Yep.
Are there other impactful things that you can recall that you can talk about or share over your 30, how many years? 35 years now?
Yeah, I've been doing EMS for 40. I've been since 85.
Yeah, wow. That's an amazing career.
40 years.
Anything,
I feel old.
Yeah, anything impactful that
There's a lot of impactful, and like I said, I've had the opportunity to speak in in multiple different aspects, not only from the stress debriefings for some of our staff that are going through a hard time with all the tragedies,
Yeah.
with all the stress there is of being a paramedic,
Mm-hmm.
but also with some other groups, and it's a pretty great, discussion that we have about that. But there's so many rewards if you focus on all the negative, because we almost on a daily basis will deal with someone else's worst day ever.
Yeah.
Almost every day. So when you're dealing with somebody's worst day ever every day, it can become a pretty big load to carry.
Right.
But we look for the things like a couple weeks ago that just absolutely rejuvenates everybody. When you get a cardiac arrest that you saved, when you get somebody that was in a traumatic injury and that you made a big difference. When I meet people in Walmart or this or that, and they talk about when they had their heart attack and that we saved them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's powerful, and that's really energizing with some of the stuff we do. So it's a great profession. I love it.
Yeah.
I can imagine doing anything else, but
Yeah.
still, I think the national standard is 3 to 5 years for burnout in EMS.
Is that
because
right?
of just because of the load of that.
But like you said, someone like you, it was in your blood from an early age.
Yep.
You were destined, and I mean, it seems as though that's a lot of the successful people. Even being a doctor or something like that, it's got to be almost something they were born with to want to
Yep.
be able to do that.
And there's great things. I mean, we talk about it all the time because I have 19 baby deliveries in the field, and
Just you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I want to get to 20, and I've been stuck for about 3 years. But we do them, and that comes into play a lot because again, them interstates that you're talking about, when people trying to make it to their hospital when they're going into labor and they're coming from other counties, and we end up getting a bunch of them that are just running out of time and calling us. So, but that's amazing parts of the job. I cherish every one of them.
Mhm.
I've met 2 or 3 of the children that I
Yeah.
delivered.
Yeah.
One of them was at a high school graduation when a girl come up and told me, "I don't know if you remember me, but you delivered me." And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
That is.
And then there was one from Seymour that she went into labor, and we picked her up, and I delivered her baby about Rogersville, and we had everything good, and we was just communicating. She goes, "This is kind of ironic because my sister was born at the Apple Market about 21 years ago." And I looked at her and I said, "And I delivered her." So they're just
yeah.
great stories
Yeah.
that just absolutely mean everything to me.
I can imagine.
To have the positives out of that. Now, when we teach too, and I teach all of the staff and everybody that I possibly can, there's so many aspects of being a paramedic, and one of them is that sometimes we can't save a life.
Yeah.
Sometimes God's in control.
Absolutely.
We're not.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't save a life. But my job is just as important because there's still family.
Yeah.
And there's still friends, and there's still people that are grieving and don't know
Right.
what to do in that situation. And that's where we come in and we console, and we do the steps that they need to do to get everything, the coroner called, get the funeral home called, taking care of them. That's the part of the compassion and being a paramedic that goes well past the life-saving aspect of it.
And you get a lot of calls too, where, and I don't know if that 7,000 includes these or not, where you don't end up transporting.
Yes.
You know, the people, for whatever reason, they don't necessarily need to go to the hospital, but
Right.
you still are
They're
there
just
giving comfort,
They're wanting
giving
medical
advice.
direction or this and that.
Yeah.
We do a lot, and I don't know exactly the numbers, but quite a few lift assists every week, where somebody has fell and the family can't pick them up,
Right.
because the elderly wife is caring for him, and he can't.
Yeah.
She can't lift them. I honestly think we probably do at least a couple of them a day in the county, if not some days 3 and 4 of them. So that's a service that we try to do. We just help them get them back up and get them settled, and then go about the day.
Yeah.
respond to something else. So
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. People just don't realize, I think, what all that you guys do provide and do. Um, I can't imagine some of the situations that you've had to witness, and just I don't know. I don't know how you do it. The house fires or the all the kinds of things that might occur out there and
yeah,
tragedies,
and tragedies happen
car
every day.
wrecks, car wrecks.
Tragedies, like I
Yeah.
said, happen every day. It's just not everybody that runs to that.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And like I said, that sometimes that there's a toll to pay for that, as we say, and that is where I'm proud to say that in the last 5 to 8 years, with state legislation that you were probably part of back when you were in Jeff City, with uh, Wounded Warriors organization, with the help of our employers, we have built a massive response to support the staff with these types of issues and stresses in their life.
Absolutely.
So we didn't have that several years
Yeah.
back, and that's one of the major benefits that we've really moved forward with, and probably say the last 5 to 10 years, which is a major improvement for the
Sure.
folks, firefighters, the law enforcement, the paramedics, and everybody that deal with this on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've always wondered whenever I come upon a stalled accident on the interstate, which it seems as though happens maybe not daily, but darn
A
near
lot.
about every other day anymore. There's a
A
stall.
lot.
How in the world do you guys keep from getting stuck in those, and what do you do? I know you probably can take off across the mediums and do different things, but it's got to be frustrating when
The
those things
cables,
occur.
which are a lifesaver,
Mhm.
are a pain in the butt.
I was getting ready to say there's always a downside, isn't there?
One of the things that we try to do, because we know the limitations of where we're at, like trying
Yeah.
to go up Northview Hill when you're going under the overpass, there is no shoulder to get
Right.
an ambulance around.
Right.
So we try to do some mapping,
Yeah.
and we get the first rigs out there, and usually are sheriff's department cars or my supervisor's rig or one of the fire departments,
Yeah.
command staff rigs.
Sure.
And we start directing the engines and the ambulances on which is the best way to come in here.
Mhm.
Sometimes, and it just happened on the accident the other day, we took the ambulances off at the 107 and run them the wrong direction down the interstate for about a mile and a half to get to the accident, because there would have been no way for them to get to anywhere else. So we just work them through, because each individual accident is something different.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to do is get an ambulance hung up in traffic for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean,
then they're useless. So
yeah, it's just
we also forward information to Mercy, who runs the Laclede County area, and to Wright County if we have an event on 60 Highway or I-44 that's going to cause the backed up traffic. We notify them so that they can reroute their ambulances down, Route 66 or wherever they need to go. So
you guys have a good relationship, I guess, with Mercy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. They're our competitor, but we are in the game together.
Absolutely.
We work alongside each other, Mercy crews on a regular basis on accident scenes. We cover calls for them in their areas. They cover calls for us in our areas. So when it gets down to the level of out here on the streets, we work extremely well together.
Yeah. Are there any counties now, to your knowledge, in the state that do not have a 911 universal system that tied in with everybody else? Like, it's always, I know back when I was in the legislature, there were still voids out there where, like if I call 911 and I'm in Webster County, it's going to ring the Webster County 911 center. But if I'm in Greene County, it's going to ring Greene.
Right.
Well, then there were areas where there wasn't a local 911 center, and I know they were working on trying to get that.
And I'm not for sure. I know that the legislators been working on 911. I know Ozark County, Douglas County, just till very recently didn't have 911.
They didn't have. So
they do now. I don't know if it covers the whole county or if it just covers the Ava area or what. But I know they've been working diligently on that, and I know that Texas County has got it now.
Yeah.
So we're getting to the point where they're all
good.
We still deal with cell phone problems. times.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning
I
that
think that was part of it
you
too.
could be sitting out by my mom's house out there in northwestern Webster County, and you're going to get Dallas County 911 every single time you dial 911.
Yeah.
Even 2, 3, 4, 5 miles into Webster.
Yeah.
But we've really worked with Dallas County 911 and Webster County 911 to try to speed up them getting a call and getting it transferred so we can get quality,
Yeah.
quick care,
Yeah.
and it's coming along.
Yeah.
We work on it every day.
There's
so.
just so much of that behind the scenes that the average patron just doesn't realize.
Right.
You know how much of that there is out there that has to be. That the technology's fantastic and wonderful, and you've come so far in 40
Right.
years. Or 50.
And that's for the whole county too.
Yeah.
A lot of folks don't realize the amazing volunteer fire departments we have in Niagara and Elkland and southern Webster
that's
County.
right.
You know, Marshfield and Logan now are paid, but Marshfield still has a ton of volunteer staff that don't get paid.
Right.
And they're all amazing.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what time it is, day or night, if I go to Niagara, there's going to be guys there, first responders there to help us.
Sure.
And Elkland, same way. Marshfield's always been a staple. And when you talked about they used to run the ambulance service back that year, they've always been a major part in the success of emergency care in Webster County.
Right. Let's talk about the helicopter service. How does that, I mean, like when you get to the scene and you pretty much immediately know if the helicopter is needed, or are they already dispatched? A lot of
Sometimes they call auto launch. If we know it's a significant event, then they can auto launch the helicopter. Because for Webster County, we don't use the helicopter very much simply because of that. If they can auto launch them and get them to the scene shortly after I'm getting to the scene, then it makes sense to put them on a helicopter and fly them to Springfield and save them minutes that could be beneficial. In most cases, though, if I get to the scene and figure out that I need a helicopter, I got to wait for them to
leave.
Dispatch, lift, get out here, sit down, take a report, load, lift. And we've done the math, and it's like we have basically mapping systems that show that we can't save the patient any time.
Yeah.
So if we're not going to save you time, then there has to be another criteria to use the helicopter. Is the helicopter able to do something that the ambulance can't? Multiple patients in an accident, yes, they're another form of rapid transport that we don't have the capabilities for. They carry blood. Ambulances do not carry whole blood products to give to patients in traumatic events.
I see.
They carry a lot of drugs to paralyze patients when they're in a critical event, stuff like that, so that you can maintain an airway and stuff like that. And so there's reasons to call the helicopter other than time, but 90% of it is that stroke patient or that heart attack patient when minutes count.
Yes.
And so it's one of the things that we take very seriously, and we look into every aspect of this. And it doesn't make any sense to put somebody on a helicopter and fly them to Springfield when I could have beat them there by ground by 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless we can hit one of them other criteria.
Yeah.
So, but we work well with our helicopters. We've got 2 of them, and then we deal with Mercy's helicopters as well if none of ours are available. And we've even dealt with Aerovac down in Ava and Seymour and stuff in the past. But like I said, we fly a very low percentage of patients simply because of that timeline.
You're close enough.
And then that's everything. That's one of the big things from old days to now and even 10 years ago. We do everything on patient outcomes. We now have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of ambulance runs and the data and the stuff for heart attacks and strokes and trauma patients. And we know, and we've defined our system to try to do every single solitary thing possible to give them the best chance for that good outcome.
Yeah.
And that's how we train, and that's how we look at our protocols and how we do everything. And we didn't have that ability even 10 years ago, with all the data and stuff that we can gather on what are we doing that's working and what are we doing that's not working. And back when I started, and for several years, it was like you heard the great success story that so and so walked out of the hospital and they're living a great life, and you're like, that's great.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. I don't know what it was that we did that necessarily promoted that. So that's just a lot of the things that we work on every day, and we research and we put high emphasis on. So
Numbers are important. That's the way we track our progress or our success or failures. I mean, certainly I can understand that in your business, especially the business of life and death.
and healthcare is always changing.
It is. That was another question that I had. So, over the years, what would you say that has been one of the most important changes, other than ambulances getting maybe better or more efficient, but like, is there certain tools or certain things that you administer or that you do today that has made a big impact that you didn't have available or didn't do 40 years ago?
Oh yeah, there's so many things. We had a basic monitor back in the 80s, probably to the early 90s, that basically would defibrillate,
Mm-hmm.
and then I could read a 3 lead, which would show me 3 views of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after we upgraded to where we got external pacing, where we can act like a pacemaker from the outside to fire somebody's heart to keep it going. We've got capnometry on them now, so that we can measure different aspects of gas exchange and stuff like that, which is very important in the resuscitation of a patient, and just stuff like that. So 12 lead EKGs was a game changer. And when we start talking about them outcomes, we, as just Cox Health, but Webster County has been a major part in anything that Cox Health, Cox EMS has
on the
been
leading edge.
12 leads for our STEMIs, which is a heart attack. We recognize them within 10 minutes arriving to somebody with chest pain, and we immediately notify the cardiac center, COXEL, or we can notify Mercy too. They both have cath labs. And so we notify them literally when we're leaving the scene, which gives them time to bring their team in, get set up, get everything ready to go, and then we bypass the ER and go straight to the cath labs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's all done because we now have the capabilities to do 12 leads and 15 leads and look at multiple different views of the heart and get that data. And our guys are trained in it, and they're very, very proficient. We run studies on it, and the paramedics are just as proficient as the ER doctors when it comes to ST elevation, which is a criteria for a heart attack. They recognize it. They do the early notification. Same way with strokes, in our strokes in our trauma patients. We call them TCDs, time critical diagnosis. That's the 3 big ones: stroke, heart attack, and trauma. And we put a lot of emphasis into that, and we're one of the leaders in the nation when it comes to emergency medical service outside of the hospital and care for the TCD patients. So
that's awesome.
The TCD was also instrumental, and it was another thing that happened in Jefferson City when we started passing legislation to do TCD guidance and stuff like that. And so that was a major part. When we talked about all the things that happened in Jefferson City to help us promote the health and healing of our communities, that's another big aspect of that. So,
do you see your general patient base, put aside trauma, but I mean, as far as the average patient base, and I won't have the terminology right, but I was just thinking if you've seen a big change, like, because our healthcare today, it seems like, at least for a lot of people, they're doing a better job of preventive healthcare. We all try to take care a little better care of ourselves maybe than our parents' generation did, in general. And of course, we're living longer. And so obviously, do you see that your calls changing? Take the trauma aside.
Right.
I mean, as far as just Is
The-
the
the
is the
medical
is the
side of
patient
it?
base more elderly maybe because the younger generation is taking better care, or
It's hard to define.
I'm just
We
curious.
have a lot of elderly, and the elderly population usually that we deal with are having, they have multiple pre-existing conditions. And they
Yeah.
have like congestive heart failure and
Yes.
emphysema and COPD and diabetes and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's the normal core. Of course, I think as we're aging, we're getting more of that population in Webster.
Right.
I think one of the big, huge influxes in patients that we're seeing on the ambulance is, trying to word it correctly,
Yeah.
is those that don't have access to a doctor to go see him at the clinic. I've got the flu. I don't feel good.
Yeah.
I can call the doctor's office and they'll tell me that they can get me in a week from next Thursday.
Yeah.
If then. That we see a lot of them that give up and just call an ambulance to go to the emergency room, because they want to try to get some care that they can't access
Mhm.
because the clinics are full and their schedules are absolutely
Right.
full, and everybody knows that. You know, you've tried to call your doctor before and
Right.
say, well, I can see you in May.
Well, and like in Webster County, I mean, we don't have a clinic that's open or an urgent care facility open after a certain time in the evening
Right.
and not on open on weekends. So I mean,
Right.
and that's when a lot of those calls you probably are getting would occur. So
Absolutely.
people, it's probably easier, or maybe they're scared, or maybe they don't know, and
Right.
it's easier just to dial 911 than it is to maybe get in the car and risk trying to get to the emergency room yourself.
Exactly.
So I can
Well,
understand that.
one thing that a lot of people don't know either is we take a lot of our patients out of the ambulance to the waiting rooms of the ER and place them in a wheelchair,
Mhm.
and they can still sit there for hours and hours and
Exactly.
hours.
Yeah.
It's not our choice. I mean,
Right.
they get mad at us.
Yeah.
And we apologize, but we do not make the determination.
Right.
We have to report to the ER on the way in what the findings are, what the complaint is, what your vital signs are, and then they make the determination to send you where they send you.
Sure.
And we have no choice. So a lot of people, and I feel sorry for them, because I mean, the worst place to be when you're sick and don't feel worth a darn is stuck in a waiting room
Yeah.
with 100 other people that's sick and don't
That's
feel
right.
worth a darn.
That's right.
But that's a limitation that we currently have in our health system right now, is that the hospitals, especially in Southwest Missouri, are inundated. They're
Yeah.
over,
Yeah.
run, and it's not uncommon every day to have multiple hour waits to see
Right.
a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Probably one of the biggest complaints I ever hear is the waiting time in an emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that, no, and it doesn't matter which hospital, but
Nope.
you know,
And I don't have an answer for it.
No.
I don't know how to
Yeah.
fix that, because it's just sheer numbers,
you guys have to have a lot of continuing education that you have to be
Oh,
able to do. I mean,
we do a lot.
you've probably got as much education after 40 years as a doctor does or more, and it's pretty amazing that you're able to do all of that and keep up with the advancements in technology.
There's a plethora of education, not to mention just for Cox Health Systems, where we have about 12 hours to 14 hours annually of education that has to be performed there. But then all of our staff go to what we call Grand Rounds, and that's 4 times a year. You'll go for 8 hours into a training simulator, where we cover either traumas or medical or safety or healthcare, things like that. So there's 32 hours there on top of that.
Wow.
12. And then everybody has to recertify on basic life support. And then the medics have to license on advanced life support, cardiac advanced life support, and pediatrics advanced life support. Then there's NOWS, and there's PHTLS, which is pre-hospital trauma life support.
Yeah.
And then there's DT for MS, and we all recertify every year for driving.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's so many
I
things.
almost venture there's probably about 100 hours a year that each one of the paramedics and EMTs have to fulfill to keep our certifications and our license current, to meet the requirements of what everybody including the state requires of us, National Registry and everybody else. So
Again, people don't really think about that.
then we have to relicense, so our licenses, if National Registry, which is a nationwide thing, is every 2 years. And then you have to apply for a Missouri State ambulance license every 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yep.
A lot of it. So what do you see in the future? What do you think the future of emergency medical services are? Is there new technology out there that we have no idea what it is yet, or do you see things out there that's coming that, futuristic stuff?
I think we're doing a lot of things now that's just in the infancy of where we're going. We have a CHAPS program where we have paramedics that are trained up. They're trained like social workers, and they're trained to a totally different field. They're already paramedics. But they go out and they interact with certain groups of patients. And, I don't know the exact statistics, but say the national average of readmission for congestive heart failure is 14%. And then we brought this group in to meet with all of the Cox and patients that were going home with the diagnosis of congestive heart failure, and it dropped to 6% readmission rate in the first 90 days or whatever. So I think what community paramedics, what it's called, but we call them CHAPS.
Yeah.
I think that's a big, huge future.
Yeah.
I think telemedicine along that lines too, because there's so many of the patients that I see that would be benefited by having a video, communication type discussion with a doctor,
right?
Or something, rather than
telemedicine, right?
Telemedicine, rather than
Yeah.
being transported to the hospital and
Right.
waiting for 14 hours in the waiting room to see a doctor for 25 minutes, have them write you a script and tell you to do this and this, and then refer you to another doctor. If we could do that from home,
right,
in
and
30 minutes,
yeah,
not only does it free up more space in emergency rooms, but then it takes you as a patient not having to spend 14 hours trying to get the problem that you're having.
Yeah. Telemedicine's been around, 10, 15 years. I mean, in the legislature, well, during COVID, it became much more prominent.
Right.
But the one thing that I've always thought about with that, and I'm sure the technology's out there and they may be doing it. Why can't we plug ourselves in? Why can't we put the cuff on and through our cell phone and send that information immediately to that teledoctor? And they could, they could do even somehow blood test, whatever the things that we have to go in to do.
That's where I think the future is.
That's what I think so
and
too.
I think it's part of that community paramedic program too. I think in the next 10 years you'll see, instead of us having 8 or 10 community paramedics, we'll have 30 or 40 of them. And they'll be the ones that are going out into the communities, and they're, we started them out using our frequent flyers, as we call them, people that were having an ambulance sent to their house more than 12 times a year. And we had, even in Webster County, we had 60, 65 visits a year for 3 different patients.
Oh my gosh.
So that's 60 sometimes a year going to just this one person. And then 60 times going to this. We got the CHAPS program, and they took all 3 of them on, and 2 of them disappeared off of our radar, and 1 of them went from 63 calls a year to 3.
Good.
And so that's the power, I think, of the future, is getting out. We don't make house calls needs to go away. We need to start making house calls and trying to take care of some of this medical problems and stuff outside of emergency room. Clinic's great, but like I said, you can only push so many people through a clinic in a day.
Right.
And they get so booked up. So the next step is that we could deal with a lot of this in telemedicine and without having to take them to the hospital.
I think you're exactly right. So what's in the future for Fred and Leah?
We love to travel.
Yeah.
So back through my history, we worked a lot of hours as EMS. We always have. I went from the first 30 years of working probably 100 hours a week, every week, 100 hours. And then I cut that back down to about 80 hours a week a couple years ago because I'm getting older and things are getting more stable and we're getting more staff and
Sure.
we're not so short. And this year it's looking like uh, I'm down to about 70 hours a week. So, that's half retired to me, you know. But our goal is, we've been doing it for several years. We talked about we have a fifth wheel RV and we've traveled the nation with it. And we love going places like that. My wife is absolutely in love with Europe, and we've done 2 trips to Europe, and we've got another one scheduled for next year. So
Yeah.
we're going to try to work for about 6 more years and travel whenever possible.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens in 6 years.
Yeah.
That's my goal, 6 years, and see what happens there, and maybe even do more traveling. So
You'll be getting close to 50 years, won't you?
yep.
Wow.
Well, I figured I'd have about 47 if I go to the point where everybody's big concern with retirement is insurance.
Yeah.
And so if I got
Sure.
to get to Medicare level before, because I can't afford to spend $2,000 a month to
That's
buy
right.
the insurance.
That's
So,
right.
so that's kind of one of the leading.
And you still got to have a supplement, but
Yep.
see how fast time goes by.
I know.
It's crazy, isn't it? Well, Fred, this has really been great. It's been very informative. I think a lot of people would appreciate the fact that you've shared so much information about your industry and thoughts about the future and the things that you guys go through. I just want to make sure people realize and remember how much behind the scenes. It's not just seeing you driving down the road with your lights on. There's just so much other between training and all the things that you have to do, the compassion you have to help show with patients and people and families, and just really appreciate your service. You've served the needs of my family numerous times. One time in the middle of the night, you had to come to my house, and you'll never forget those moments and the compassion that you and your colleagues had, and at a time that's that's stressful for people. So we just really appreciate that.
Well, no problem. That's back in the statement where we deal on a daily basis with other people's worst days ever.
Yeah.
And our goal should always be to do everything possible to make the situation better.
Yeah.
Not even talking about the good quality care and doing the right medical things, but on the personal part of it, our goal should be to do anything and everything possible to try to make your worst day ever better, and that should be our goal. So
do no harm and only do good.
Right.
There's a motto that they use. I know in the health field when I was with the Department of Health.
No harm.
Do no harm. Do no harm. And and if every business, if every person would have that motto in their back of their mind, we'd live in a better world for sure. But any final thoughts?
I just appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Yeah. I love what I do and have done my whole life, and doing it in Webster County and where I live, Laclede County, Douglas County. Yeah. But really it's right here, based in Webster County is where I spent my adult life, working on ambulance and doing what we do, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, it's man, we really appreciate it. There, you and there's a handful of you guys that some have went on and have passed, and some are still around that have dedicated your lives to this kind of service.
Multiple doctors have worked on the ambulance in Webster County, including Dr. Robinson. Yeah. But there's half a dozen at least others that I know of that have become physicians after working here. We've got multitudes of nurses now that are specializing in critical care. 3 of the flight crew members in Cox's system used to work here in Webster County full time. I go back in the good old days, and I remember some of the other guys too. Like Randy Clare, he's still prominent in the community, and he used to work on the ambulance. And there's just so many of them. I forget him. Kenny Harding was one of my mentors. Yeah, when he was on the ambulance, along with Mark Wilson, Mark Alexander, stuff like that. There's so many of them that meant so much that I'm sure I'm forgetting.
You've worked with all these great law enforcement people. We mentioned Sheriff Fraker and you know, Tom Martin and all those
Mhm.
guys over the years that Jerry Lassiter and, you know, there's just, just a ton of them that just, again, you had to learn so much
Oh yeah, there's
and
just so many big
work
names.
with.
Ken Clardy,
And then Gary Fraker
Gary
and Joe Arthur and
Fraker.
those guys, you know, dealing with all the death and all the trauma and tragedies. And I mean, it just, it's really remarkable, and we really appreciate it. I always have admired emergency people because I'm not really geared for that, and I do think you have to kind of have it in your genes, and you guys do, and we just really appreciate it.
Yeah, I've always said it helps if you're a little off to begin with.
But well, you certainly have to be able to handle a lot of things
Yeah.
that a lot of people can't. So, well, we appreciate it very much, and I hope you have some happy times ahead with your beautiful wife and family, and enjoy, you know, the days coming down the road. Someday retire and enjoy life. And but
Life is good.
it is great, isn't it? Yeah.
I love every aspect of it, and I love being able to do what I do.
Yeah.
So for the community, for
Yeah.
that,
Good.
it means a lot to me.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank
No
you,
problem.
Fred.
Thank
All
you,
right.
sir.
We'll see y'all later. We'll be in touch. So stay tuned. We'll have some more special guests on for you. Thanks, everybody.